Am I here? Is this thing on?
You are on, you nasally motherfucker.
Oh.
That was the perfect beaker.
Welcome back to I'll See Myself Out. My name is Dan Lisho.
My name is Norm Reynolds.
I am Terry.
And I'm Ryan.
Consider these your only warnings.
There will be foul language.
There will be spoilers.
And there will be foul language.
Wow, you got really close for that one.
Let's talk about what we're doing here today. So we're back for episode 29, our first ever audio only episode, and back from what I think is about a 6 or 7 month break now, if I'm not mistaken.
That sounds about right.
Yeah.
Give a few days.
I mean, could be centuries, really.
As far as we know, time is relative, right? We actually could be recording this in the past. Yeah.
Yeah, what is time?
This could be our first recording, and we're going to find this later and realize it.
Bury it.
All right, so before we get into it, let's talk about what this movie is actually about. So Brimstone came out in 2016, and Brimstone is a Western thriller retelling the survival story of a young woman in the Wild West, starring Dakota Fanning, Guy Pearce, and Kit Harington. If you guys want to check this movie out before you sit down and watch our review while we discuss all the different plot points and things we loved and hated about the film, Brimstone will be dropping on Netflix Canada on February 1st, so check that out and join in the discussion. Let's get into it. Let's talk about this movie and how it probably ruined a lot of our days and nights after watching it.
Can we start with the fact that it was a dumpster fire mixed with a horrifying events that will now scar me for permanently in my entire life?
Oh yeah, there's a lot to unpack. I mean, we'll unpack why we didn't like it, but first, was there anybody here that didn't enjoy the movie at all?
Yeah, me. Oh my god. Like
you didn't like anything about it. The characters, the story, anything?
I am permanently scarred from this thing, man. I had to move away from life for about half an hour afterwards watching that thing.
Cold shower?
I had to go sit outside and just unpack what I just fucking saw. And I would say Saw and Hostel were less traumatic than this movie.
I'm actually in the same boat. It took me a while to process this. It was a lot more than I had signed up for sure.
Talk about jumping out of the car and running. This was... I was expecting a nice little smooth transition to a level playing field movie. God damn.
This is jumping out of the car running and realizing that your foot's tangled in the seatbelt and the brick on the accelerator.
And there's a truck in the other lane, so you're just ready to eat grill.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. Dan, what did you feel about the movie?
That says everything.
This movie was... Okay, I want to talk about what I liked about it. I liked how they had all the different chapters and how the chapters worked backwards. It led me to believe that there was a supernatural element to it. Because once we got to the second act and we saw the Reverend have his throat cut and then burned, we're well, who the fuck was in the first act then? You know what I mean? It was we've gone back in time. So it was really cool and intriguing that way, how it carried us along the story backwards, and we were left to kind of unravel it the farther back in time we went.
Right.
So I really like stuff like that. The part that really stood out to me, though, is when he tried to have sex with his own daughter.
Oh.
And his wife said, "It's a sin." And his response in summation was, "No, it's not." And I was that's kind of like COVID. That's trying to deal with fucking people that are spitting in the face of all these scientists. They're this is a real issue. And people are "No, it's not." Yeah. So I saw some parallels there with, humanity.
The dumpster fire that is humanity? Holy crap.
So when you tried to step away from this movie to feel a little bit better about, just to get back to zero, I realized that I was still stuck in COVID life, and I couldn't get away from the movie because I felt like I was still dealing with it.
Fuck, you need a cuddle, Dan. Jesus Christ. Maybe I need to give a big bear hug just to cover you down. God damn.
I definitely want to say I liked this movie, but I liked it for what it was. It's a hard movie to walk away from and feel good about life after watching.
For sure.
So to tie into a little bit about what Dan was just mentioning, was one of the most interesting things about this movie for me was just the appeal of the story outline and how the plot progressed based on how they actually did time jumps within the story. Except unlike a normal film that might, aim to have sort of a level of closure or to make people understand things in a more acceptable way, it just seemed like every chapter within the story went a little bit farther to make the previously known events seem that much fucking worse. So it was like every part of the story that was told made everything that did happen that was bad even worse than it was when you watched it at the time. It was just this compounding effect throughout the entire movie of like, shit just gets worse. There are no good people. There are no heroes in this story. And even the concept of the movie itself, like I kind of took the concept of the movie like a little bit literally, because it's called Brimstone, which is like
Hellfire?
like, okay, like the archaic use of brimstone is because of sulfur. And sulfur was considered to be like something that only occurred due to like lightning strikes. They would affiliate like holy retribution and judgment coming down. And what was interesting about like relating that title to this film was that it's like, how do you relate like divine judgment to what happens to the characters in this story when the most religious person in this story is the potentially one of the darkest fucking people I've ever seen in a story. So it's like, is God like is he the villain in this movie? Because it kind of feels that way by the time you're done. At least that's how I felt when I was watching this fucking thing.
Fuck, you're unpacking a lot of dark shit here there, Ryan. Fuck.
Definitely a really fucking dark movie. I think Guy Pearce did like an amazing job, and his character just got so much harder to handle as the movie went on, because everything he did just became like more and more fucking ruthless and heartless. And what's interesting is like also the way that every time you kind of see something good happening to Liz, the main character, as soon as something good comes into the picture, it's like you don't even have to wait 15 minutes before it blows up in her fucking face and her life goes to shit again. So I mean, I didn't enjoy that in a certain sense. Like it made me feel good. It was just like a really unforgiving way to tell a story. And I think that's one of the things that makes this movie as compelling as it is, despite being really fucking depressing. And I probably wouldn't suggest this to everybody. You probably don't want to watch this movie when you're having a rough day, because it won't make your day better.
No, that's for sure. It made my day a hell of a lot worse.
Yeah, it was a lot.
So I think it's fair to say like we all liked it, but like we liked it in the way like you sort of enjoy like a dark joke, like you know it's wrong, but you still kind of like it.
No.
I think overall, I have to say I didn't like the movie, although I really appreciated the acting was brilliant. I liked the story. I didn't like how I thought they lingered on some things excessively, which I found disturbing, but maybe that drove some of the points home. But I think what I liked was kind of the flip of the Western narrative, where for men, it's a really like kind of glorious and lawless time, but for women, it was like the exact opposite. And I think it kind of highlighted that.
That was good. Yeah.
Agreed. Yeah.
I will give it that. I will agree with you on that. That was definitely well done in that regard. But I got stuck on too many things that just will be in my nightmares for the next 20, 30 years.
Yeah, especially like Kit Harington's American accent, right?
Oh. The fact that he's only in the movie for like 20 minutes and then just done, gone, forgotten, other than like, okay, we're going to name my kid this guy's name. Like, I still don't realize his purpose, probably because I was high. At this point, I had gone into like a shell-shocked state of what am I watching here? And now my mind is starting to repress the events that were happening before. Just
yeah, I spent a good amount of time trying to decide what his purpose was in the movie, and I think where I landed was
cannon fodder.
Well, yeah, but so that was definitely part of it. It was driving home how like quick and ruthless the Reverend was.
Okay, that makes sense.
I think for Liz or Joanna, that was kind of the first experience she had with an outsider that wasn't part of the religious faith that she was kind of born into.
Okay.
Right.
And somebody who was outwardly telling her like that what's happening here isn't right, like this isn't good, maybe even like justifying her feelings, like she was already feeling like it wasn't a good thing, and to have somebody validate is the word I was looking for. Yeah, so I think maybe that's probably the sole purpose of that character.
Yeah.
I might add that I think also, at least I think this kind of ties into also what you mentioned before, Norm, which was that with the West being so unforgiving, especially toward women in that time, it was like, to me, Kit Harington's character, whose name is Samuel, I think, that his character sort of symbolized, like, to me, like the hero in the story. Pretty much everybody who comes to her defense in her life ends up getting brutally murdered in some way.
Oh, yeah.
And Samuel kind of shows up like in the moment when like everything kind of comes together in that chapter to try to like kind of be the hero and save her from her father. And he has his moment not for more than like 10 seconds before he gets fucking killed. And to me, that was just like, that was a bit of a way to say like there are no heroes in like real stories like this. Like there are no heroes in the West. Like there's no 20-minute gun battles. Even as another example would be, the monologue from the older guy in the street during the duel between him and the brothel owner, when he gives this monologue about, you know, how there's got to be good in the world and there's got to be justice, and he's challenging this guy to a duel to prove that, you know, as a father you have to stand up for women and you have to reinforce that there are good values in the world worth maintaining in spite of there being so many bad people, and he just gets fucking obliterated within the first half second of that duel, right?
Have you noticed, but he was actually shot by the sheriff or the deputy
From the window, right?
before Frank fired his weapon? Yeah.
Right. I thought that it was a little fast. I might have missed it, but I wasn't sure if that was what happened.
Yeah, it's he was shot like a split second before Frank's weapon fired.
Yeah, if you pay close attention to the actual duel itself, he gets shot before. Frank is the guy's name?
Yeah, the brothel owner.
Yeah,
Frank's Inferno.
that's right. So a split second before the opponent gets shot, a split second before Frank's gun goes off, you see the opponent get shot, and it's really disjointed. And I was wondering in that moment if it was just like a weird editing choice, or if the sound was off, and then they cut to the brother of Frank in the window. And you realize that, oh, that's who actually shot him. And I was really conflicted about that, because I feel like even though justice was against him on that one, like he probably should have got shot. You know what I mean? But if it was my brother in a duel, I'm pretty sure I would have a gun in a window far away as well. So it's like a weird, like I'm not going to watch my brother get shot.
Right.
You know what I mean?
It was like a morally and ethically like challenging situation on both sides, right?
The other thing that I thought was really strange about Kit getting fucking shot in the head there was leading up to it, they put a lot of emphasis on the women in the Reverend's life doing all of the hard labor. And I guess that was normal for that time, or at least within his circle of religious fanatics. And yet he was able to grab the gun and overpower this outlaw who's clearly been like living his life on the road and probably has had to do some hard labor, and like, where did all that strength and muscle come from? You just smoke your pipe all day and tell people what to do.
He was also shot twice. I mean, he was still recovering from that, I think.
That's a good point. That's a fair point.
But to go along with Dan, though, he does that multiple times. Every single person, like in the start with the husband who gets stabbed in the gut, he turned the knife. The gun at the end, he turns the gun. Like, it's every single time he gets into a conflict where he grabs a weapon, he's able to overpower the person.
He also disembowels the guy in the beginning. I want to know what his background story is, the Reverend, because he's also an incredible shot with a sniper rifle, and his ability to misdirect and anticipate when somebody's going to do something, like when he placed the doll in the bed knowing that the daughter was going to go there and he was already at the house. Like there was too many, like it's almost like he's got some kind of high field ranking military background that a Reverend you just suspect wouldn't have. And especially if, like, what comes along with that is a lot of life experience, a world experience as well.
Maybe to add to that, and maybe this is where something more symbolic becomes actually more literal in the movie that isn't presented in a literal way, is like, this motherfucker gets taken down so many times and keeps coming back worse than before. So like when he gets his throat cut at the brothel, I don't know how the fuck he got back up from any of that.
And lit on fire. Don't forget the lighting on fire.
Right. Yeah, sorry. He had his throat slashed and was set on fire. Maybe it's some of like the literal symbolism in the movie is he is literally like a vessel of God. There's a level of supernatural help.
The other thing, actually, a bit about what you were saying, Dan, with like how good he was at like overpowering people and with the sniper rifle. I was thinking, you know, when you have no doubts and you're sure that you're going to win, and then that's like enough a mental edge to get you there. Maybe that plays a bit of a role in it.
Like his self-righteousness and confidence and like willpower.
Yeah, like he's so certain that God is going to win the battle for him that he just wins, winning by willpower.
That's an interesting thought, but like I've taken on, I can't tell you how many projects based on sheer willpower and have failed miserably at all of them. And it wasn't because I didn't have the expertise, the knowledge, or the skill to achieve it. I did it in time, but unless he's snipering people on the regular, I don't think he's going to have the skill, especially in that snowstorm. Like she was like 20 feet away from him and couldn't see him. And this guy is in the bush, which is considerably farther away, far enough that he has to use a sniper rifle. And sniper rifles at this time also, I don't imagine that they're anything like they are today. And there's quite a bit of skill involved in like the wind and just like knowing how high to aim just to make sure that the bullet falls.
Well, Dan, if I can add as well to your point, it wasn't just a sniper rifle. It was the fact that he was shooting a small boy through a fucking snowstorm. Like, she was watching her son get off the wagon to walk out to get the rifle, and he was maybe like not even 20 feet back, and she was losing visibility. So how the fuck did he shoot that kid from like half a kilometer away?
Well, maybe he spent a lot of time hunting for his food, when he was searching, rather than staying in a place and looking.
I think the Reverend is actually Predator, if I'm being honest, at this point.
Yeah.
Just got this futuristic infrared.
Yeah, it's one of those things, though. The only thing that was up front was how warped his view of the world was, and everything else about him was super ambiguous, and there wasn't enough information to give motivation to all of his skills and his relentlessness. Like there is I think out of all the chapters that were there, I would have loved to have seen one of them kind of highlight his background a bit and give some context to, is like, even if they had a whole chapter that was him hunting with his father and his father imparting some really warped fucking wisdom and driving the point home and like beating him and just like turning him into this monster, or even if they went the supernatural route, like how did he survive all of these fucking onslaughts?
Maybe they were leaving room for a prequel, like Brimstone Origins, or the Brimming.
Shut the fuck up, Norm. The Brimmening hurts me the most of all the things you just said.
I think like we can all agree that time frame of the Wild West is fucked up in general. Like the society was just absolutely messed up. But to add this hit level of like horrendousness to it, you've got to have some sort of backstory on the guy. Like it is insane to think that this guy's thought process is so out of whack. Like I said, I had to pause this movie. It took me, I think Dan, you said it took you 3.5 hours to watch it. This thing took me 7 hours to watch it. I am not lying. It took me 7 hours to watch it because I had to pause it and like walk away. Not like the movie itself, filming was like well done and all like that.
Oh yeah, beautiful. It was beautifully done.
The subject matter on it was so dark and so out of what is like good morality sense that I couldn't unpack it, to the point where I had to go watch a horror movie afterwards just to lift up my spirit.
Yeah,
put on The Exorcist immediately after.
I watched Annabelle afterwards,
which is a lot when it comes from you, Terry.
Yeah.
Can we let our listeners know how fucked up it is that Terry, of all people, turned to Annabelle, a movie about a doll
that kills people, that's haunted by demons?
I've got some context here. When we watched one of the movies in theater, when theaters were a thing,
yep,
there was a preview on for Brahms the Boy, and I watched Terry, who was sitting next to me, cover his eyes, turn his head a little bit.
And remember, I am a grown adult, and I have a horrendous fear of like coming to life dolls.
Let's take a hot minute to talk about just that very fact about how fucked this movie was. So, let's talk about how fucked up things get right away with that birth in the church, and then later on with the husband, with her husband getting killed. And I have to say, I think out of the entire movie, as gruesome as most things were, I did not at first, maybe it was the shock factor of maybe not being like acclimated to the film yet, but the shock factor of her husband being disemboweled and then hung by his intestines in the barn. Man, that fucking caught me really off guard. That was probably the most brutal thing in the movie for me.
I disliked how long they like just stared at that shot. I was like, okay, like I'm not gonna forget this. And then 30 seconds later, it was just wrapping up.
Like that was pretty dark, but it just, every chapter gets so much darker. On a positive note, I will say I was super surprised and like super impressed with Dakota Fanning in this movie. I thought she was going to ruin it because I haven't really seen a movie with her where like I felt really blown away by her as an actress, and that could just be personal taste as well. But in this film, like I was super surprised, and like I wasn't disappointed at all with Guy Pearce. He's such a seasoned veteran actor that I usually expect him to do a good job in a shit role, but he did a really amazing job in this role as well. There's a lifelessness in his eyes when he plays the Reverend that just like really sells that character to me.
It's a terrifying lifelessness.
Yeah.
And when it comes to Dakota Fanning, I've seen a bunch of her movies when she was a kid, and she was one of those actors that you're like, fucking watch out. This person is going to just storm Hollywood and take over when she gets older. And then since she got older, I've only really seen 2 movies with her. One is this, and the other is one of the movies from the Twilight series. And she barely spoke in both of them, and I'm wondering when we're gonna see a movie where she has like legit speaking. Yeah, I mean, I guess when you went to the other chapters, we got to hear her talk more.
She didn't have a tongue for half the movie, so.
But yeah, exactly. So it's just interesting that she's getting cast in these roles that have like less speaking parts, especially as a like in the I can't remember which Twilight movie it is, but she wasn't a main character.
I think it's the last one. Yes, I'm actually have pulled up her filmography, and I'm looking at seeing if it's Twilight Saga Breaking Dawn Part 2.
Breaking Dawn.
Breaking Dawn Part 2.
I think that's the one I've seen. I don't think I've seen the real one.
Double check. I think you're on Google.
If I have any spare time this week, a Breaking Dawn poster is going to be one of my Photoshop projects. but yeah, I agree. Like I'm just looking up her filmography as well, and her profile page, and she is, for somebody who's going to be 27 next month, I mean, I think she's got plenty of time to grow into her role as an actor.
Oh yeah, for sure.
100%. Yeah.
But this movie was a good example of, I would say, like her more of having a more mature career in film. And I'd say as another great point about her performance in this film, for somebody who went into this role having largely like a nonverbal role, learning sign language and conveying the nature of her character in scenes where there isn't any language, like concerning like when her daughter is outside with the Reverend when she's trapped inside the barn, and like there's so many other scenes, but that's just one great example of like the urgency and the emotion that's conveyed in a scene where she's not delivering any verbal lines. So I think she did like a pretty outstanding job, especially for the character she was given.
Yeah. And I have to agree with you. She is she did a phenomenally good job, especially with the non-verbal acting.
Yeah, she knocked it out of the park. She did a great job.
Her character acting is amazing. Like, you have to admit, her steely eye at the end is kind of the tell-all to the character of it. The look of, well, this is the end.
What was everybody's like favorite part of the movie?
The credits.
Like, I mean, I guess I'm thinking like scene wise or plot wise. If you had to choose one part, what was your favorite scene or plot point out of the film?
The ending where she is, and not like, I'm not just being facetious. How she's being taken away, it's realized who she is and the ending of where she's being taken away, and she doesn't want to be taken away anymore. It's I'm controlling my own life. That kind of that steely, I called it steely resolve. It was just I'm done. This is mine. I'm done. This is mine. I'm done. Full ending.
I thought it was also fun how so there was a lot to unpack with that ending as well. So one of the things that we know for sure is that Guy Pearce's character is relentless, and when you think he's dead, he's not, and then when you think he's dead again, he's not. And Liz is the preacher's offspring, part of the bloodline, and this is the first time that we've thought she was dead. But then at the very end, her daughter says, I always feel like she's still here watching me, and then looks off into the forest. And I feel like one of the things that she inherited from the preacher was her ability to not fucking die, and crawled her way out of that lake. And then because we know those gunshots didn't hit her, if we know anything about physics, that those bullets got ripped apart as soon as they got a few feet under the water. I think she probably crawled her way out, and she's living in the forest doing what her dad does best, just not dying.
Hermit style.
Yeah.
Just hunting people like the preacher, but for good. She becomes the anti-preacher.
She probably has a shack somewhere out there, staying hidden in the shadows because there is a warrant out for her arrest.
The Reverendess.
Norm's ability to remold words that aren't words into words is one of the things that upsets me the most, but also impresses me the most about being friends with Norm. I like the idea that I hadn't considered that in the end, but I like the idea that it's possible that it was not only her mother, but quite frankly, I mean, it's also possible because you don't fully see the Reverend die, that it becomes so hard to believe that he's gone, that he didn't just like become a forest hermit and he's just waiting until, one daughter or the next becomes age until he can incestify them into his life again.
Jesus
Fucking
Christ.
incestify.
That's not a word. That
Jesus.
word's made up.
I'm taking notes from Norm.
To circle back to my favorite scene in this movie, might be a little controversial, but it was the scene where Liz is telling her mother in the church that she would rather die than live this life. And then her mother just stands up and walks out of the church, and then moments later drops down and is... So the mother hangs herself off the balcony, and you're expecting a particular reaction out of the Reverend, maybe some kind of remorse, and there is none. He's filled with rage, and then just starts condemning her soul. And I didn't like it because of the content per se, but I loved it because of it was a little bit more of a window into... I think it's one of the first times we see a real emotional reaction out of the Reverend. Everything else has seemed pretty twisted, but this was twisted as well. But it was everything up until this point is just kind of matter of fact. This is how the world is. You are my servant. The man is in charge. There's no emotion behind any of it. It's just this is how it is. And then this happens, and it's the first time the Reverend fucking explodes with rage. And it could be some remorse that's getting channeled into rage, but it was a cool shift that I enjoyed seeing in that character.
Yeah, it was a great performance part for sure. I really liked that. Norm, what was your favorite part of the film?
I actually really did like the characters, the acting. Thought that all the roles except for Matthew, the boy, was convincing. Like when he was being shot, it took me out of it in the way that he was like, "Ow, oh, golly gee!" Like it really wasn't like. Not that I really want a 10-year-old to be able to relate how to get shot, but it sounded like when Roger like stubs his toe. Like it's like, okay, like I know you're hurt, but it's not that bad, buddy.
He did just kill his father, so maybe he's like in a weird place.
That's fair. Yeah, but the acting, I enjoyed that, and I also enjoyed what I think the story was, like the overall message. But in terms of the content, I just I did not like it. I did not like watching it. I would say that it's affected me permanently, and I don't think I would recommend it.
I have a follow-up. A close second for my favorite scene was when Dakota Fanning was let's say servicing a man in one of the brothel rooms, and it's just before the duel outside. So somebody runs in and it's like, Frank's in gunfight. And he's like, wait a minute, I'm almost done. And then she just shows the other girl shows her butt and goes, maybe we can get her to join next time. And he's like, oh God, I'm done.
That might have been the most lighthearted part of the whole movie.
It was just like...
I mean, that or the guy that Kid Harington was hanging in the outhouse.
Oh my God,
that was pretty lighthearted to me.
Jesus,
by comparison.
Fair enough.
It felt like a comedic break, actually.
It was a little bit off track. I didn't really see that coming either. But once it started, it was like I kind of felt like Dakota Fanning in that scene. Like I felt like I couldn't look away once it was happening. But yeah, that brothel scene was fucking hilarious. Definitely the funniest part of the movie. I think probably my favorite scene would have to be the final scene between Liz and the Reverend when he's tied her up and he's about to pretty much literally rape her daughter, and she's struggling with the justification of dislocating both of her arms to get out of being tied up to try to stop him, because you can just see like even when she's not delivering any lines, you can see like the internal struggle, and you can see just how fucking evil he is as a human being. So like that whole scene, and especially the way that when she finally does land a shot on him in the end, that he goes flying out the fucking window while on fire, was almost like a Tarantino-esque end to the movie, which I really liked. Like I almost laughed a little bit because I thought it was like, it had just a tinge of being comical that I thought like, this is a great way to end the movie. I actually would have laughed a little bit if it had like a more Tarantino ending where like she delivered like a one-liner, but not like a great one-liner because she has no tongue. So it was like a jarbled up one-liner would have been fucking hilarious at the end.
Shut your fucking mouth.
But that definitely rounds it out for me. I really enjoyed this movie. I think it's worth a watch, but I also think it's a fucking nightmare.
Shotgun wedding.
100%. Yeah, that would have done it for me,
dude.
Buddy.
Yeah.
I think this movie pushed some things really far. I think the one believable or not believable thing about this movie was how relentless the Reverend was. But aside from that, this was a really good insight into the life of women in that time frame, but like everybody. Like it was an insight into the mindset of men at that time and religious fanatics. If it in that sense, it was a real, again, excluding the relentlessness of the Reverend, it was a pretty realistic view into that world.
Yeah, I think that there were so many scenes out of this film that all the major scenes in this movie had something to say that was a commentary on the unfair treatment of different kinds of people, and especially in this film, women. And it definitely is an eye-opening commentary on really like the antithesis of going against what like a hero narrative would be in your traditional Western movies. So do we want to give it our classic rating system? Everybody chooses their different ratings, and we decide to rate it our own way.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and give it 7 out of 9 scenes that I'll never be able to scrub out of my brain.
Yeah, that's good. All right.
I'm going to give it 1 Annabelle movie out of 10 dreams I will never want to see again.
Starring Woody Harrelson.
No, I don't want to keep him away from this.
Protect Woody's innocent.
That's perfect. That's perfect. I will give this movie 8 out of 10 severed tongues.
Wow. That's a lot of tongues.
I give this movie 8.5 out of 10 outhouse hangings.
That's pretty high on the outhouse hanging scale. All right, so whether you've watched this film already or whether you're looking forward to it based on the discussion we've had today, Brimstone, having been released in 2016, is arriving on Netflix Canada starting February 1st. Thank you for listening, and don't forget to follow us on your favorite streaming service for more content. We hope that you enjoyed this episode of the podcast, and we hope that you'll join us next time as we talk about the science fiction adventure, The Mortal Engines, which is also dropping into Netflix Canada this February.